Passing the buck this Wednesday night, how Canadians are about to shell out more as food suppliers and retailers react to rising fuel costs.
We have to pay.
How smaller stores are being hit harder than grocery giants. Prime Minister Mark Carney's majority era.
I do have a big grin on my face.
How it's raising expectations for the government. Looksmaxxing.
The idea of maximizing physical attractiveness by any means necessary.
The pressure some young men feel to upgrade their looks through extreme methods. Plus, major goal, the three teams with a shot of bringing the Stanley Cup back to Canada.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. There have been plenty of warnings about how Canadians will pay a price for the war the U.S. and Israel started with Iran. As the cost of fuel rises, the impact is rippling through supply chains and being passed on to consumers. Now, several major food suppliers are adding a fuel surcharge to their deliveries at a time when inflation has already driven up the price of groceries. Jillian Piper looks at what this latest hit could mean for your grocery bill.
Bananas.
Okay, I'll do bananas.
Scott Proudfoot visits this independent grocery store in Ottawa every week, but he still faces some sticker shock.
Even 5 cents difference in today's economic downturn is really huge.
Manager Marilyn Div says she tries to avoid passing on rising costs to consumers, but a new $10 fuel surcharge she just received on an order from a food supplier, who she did not want to name, could force her to raise prices.
We had to impose that on the client, and that's not very fair.
Letters obtained by Global News show multiple food suppliers adding fuel surcharges onto grocery store delivery bills, all blaming spiking oil prices from the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran. Tree of Life is adding a $10 per order surcharge starting April 22nd, saying they won't remove the fee until Canadian fuel costs return to an average of $1.20 per litre, while Maple Leaf added 11 cents per kilogram on all orders starting April 6, which they say will decrease as fuel prices lower. Those charges all add up to more pain for Canadians.
No way that you can avoid passing that on to your customers. If you don't, you're not going to be an independent grocer. You'll be an out-of-business grocer.
Some retailers have more leverage. Grocery giant Sobeys tells Global News it will not pay the added fees. And while Loblaw says it does not discuss specific commercial arrangements, it did say we continue to push back on unjustified cost increases, including on fuel surcharges. Smaller retailers do not have the luxury of saying no.
The distributor will basically say, well, we don't have to deliver, and then we're stuck with no delivery. So we have to pay, and it's really disappointing to see that the big box stores get that form of relief and the small grocer doesn't.
While these fuel surcharges may seem small, Donna, they will likely lead to another increase in grocery prices, which have risen by more than 30% since 2019.
Okay, Jillian Piper in Ottawa, thanks. The federal Liberals had to add some extra chairs to their caucus meeting on Parliament Hill today. There are now enough Liberal MPs to lift the government from a minority to a majority. David Akin reports on the new reality in the House of Commons and the added pressure on the Carney government to deliver.
To the victors go the grins.
I do have a big grin on my face. Grand sourire.
The Prime Minister showing off the three winners of Monday's by-elections.
Canadians have placed their trust in the government's plan. We now have reinforcements to help implement that.
Sarnia MP Marilyn Gladue has spent Wednesday mornings for the last decade at Conservative caucus meetings. But after crossing the floor last week, she was welcomed for the first time to the Liberal caucus.
Marilyn, how was your first Liberal caucus meeting? How did it go?
Fantastic. What a great group. I'm very excited to start building Canada strong for all.
Gladue is a social conservative, but Mark Carney's big red tent stretches far enough to include her and three other conservative floor crossers, as well as two former New Democrats, like Dolly Begum, who just won in a Toronto by-election after being an Ontario NDP MPP.
It was fantastic. It was great. Lots of love.
And Laurie Idlout, the former NDP MP, who crossed the floor earlier this year.
I've had the warmest welcome.
On the way into their caucus meeting, Conservatives were standing by their leader.
Our caucus is united behind Pierre Poilievre. We are focused on the needs of Canadians.
I think we need to continue doing what we're doing, talking about affordability, talking about real solutions that will make life more affordable for Canadians.
Later in question period, the Prime Minister and the opposition leader jousted over Pierre Poilievre's comments that Mark Carney was poorly educated about economics.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Mr. Speaker, I feel like I'm in the presence of students.
Oh, the Liberal arrogance. You could cut through it with a knife. What we have over there is inflation of Liberal arrogance.
Yeah. Happy as the Liberals were today, some of them are saying privately that the concern now is about meeting heightened expectations, that Canadians will take the Prime Minister at his word when he says that a majority means that the government will indeed move quickly on everything from affordability to resource development to justice reform. Donna.
Okay, David Akin, thank you. Prime Minister Carney has made Time magazine's annual list of 100 most influential people. And the head of the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde, wrote the description of him. Nicknamed the George Clooney of finance, she writes, after becoming the Prime Minister of Canada last year, he was the first to conceptualize the breaking point of multilateralism as we have known it for decades. I trust he will now reinvent cooperation among the willing for the common good of all. Carney appears in the leaders section along with 5 others, including the Pope and President Trump. To the Middle East now, the White House says reports the U.S. has requested an extension of the 2-week ceasefire with Iran due to expire next week are not true. Iran and the U.S. are still exchanging messages, with Pakistan acting as a mediator, but no formal talks on a ceasefire are underway. And the key shipping lane through the Persian Gulf remains restricted by both Iran and the U.S. Redmond Shannon reports on where things stand.
In affluent North Tehran, life goes on as normally as possible halfway through the delicate 2-week ceasefire.
Of course we're afraid, but you know, we try to be relaxed and hope to the peace days.
At the city's airport, Pakistan's army chief arrives, aiming to help bring that peace as an intermediary between Iran and the US. Iran's foreign ministry says Pakistan has been relaying messages between the warring nations ever since peace talks fell apart Sunday. Some positive messaging from the White House too about a potential resumption of talks in Pakistan.
We feel good about the prospects of a deal.
Both sides dangled a carrot and a stick Wednesday as Washington added new Iran sanctions. Iran's military threatened it would expand its Strait of Hormuz restrictions to the Red Sea if this week's new US blockade continues.
If you do not comply with this blockade, we will use force.
The US military says no vessels to or from Iran have passed its blockade. In the past day, only a handful of ships have been allowed to pass through the US and Iranian restrictions in the Persian Gulf. US President Donald Trump made overt threats about what could happen if Iran doesn't make a deal.
We could take out every one of their bridges in 1 hour. We could take out every one of their power plants.
Trump says Chinese President Xi Jinping has assured him that China is not sending arms to Iran, but most of Iran's oil goes to China, which the White House says is included in its blockade. Trump is scheduled to meet with Xi in China next month. Donna?
Okay, Redmond Shannon in London, thanks. Canada, the UK, Australia, Japan, and 6 other countries are condemning the killing of 3 UN peacekeepers in Lebanon. In a joint statement, they're also calling for an urgent end to hostilities. The UN has said preliminary findings from its probe showed 1 peacekeeper was killed by an Israeli tank projectile and 2 by an improvised explosive device, most likely placed by Hezbollah. Today, Israeli airstrikes continued to pound southern Lebanon, a day after the first round of historic talks between Lebanon and Israel in Washington. Smoke could be seen rising over coastal cities, which have come under frequent attack. Pope Leo, on a trip to Africa, says his visit offers a message of unity and peace the world needs to hear. The American president, though, doesn't like what he's hearing. In a social media post, Donald Trump has taken another swipe at the Pope, and the vice president, who is Catholic, has questioned the Pope's understanding of the Catholic doctrine of a just war. Pope Leo not only understands it, he considers the architect of that theory, St. Augustine, to be his spiritual father. Taria Isri reports on how those loyal to Trump keep backing him in this feud.
In the deepening feud, the leader of the Catholic Church appears to be trying to take the high road.
Although we have different beliefs, we have different ways of worshiping, we have different ways of living, we can live together in peace.
As he visited Cameroon on his African tour, Pope Leo made no mention of Donald Trump, in contrast to the U.S. president who attacked him again. Posting, "Will someone please tell Pope Leo that Iran has killed 42,000 innocent, completely unarmed protesters in the last 2 months? For Iran to have a nuclear bomb is absolutely unacceptable."
You are a practicing Catholic.
The row now includes U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance.
I think it's very, very important for the Pope to be careful when he talks about matters of theology. And I think that one of these issues here is that there has been, again, hey, random dude screaming, I told you I'd respond to your point.
House Speaker Mike Johnson also sided with the president.
A pontiff or any religious leader can say anything they want, but obviously if you wade into political waters, I think you should expect some political response.
But Johnson did think Trump went too far with this, asking him to take down the now deleted AI image depicting him as a Christ-like figure.
And I thought it was me as a doctor.
Days later, Trump reposted an image of himself, not as Jesus, but next to him.
Within the evangelical supporters, we're starting to see a form of fracture.
There's also a fracture forming between Trump and one of his closest European allies, Italy's right-wing prime minister. Giorgia Meloni called Trump's comments about the Pope unacceptable. He responded to an Italian newspaper, saying, "I thought she had courage, I was wrong." It's all highlighting just how much his comments have offended many Catholics, progressives, and conservatives alike. Donna?
All right, Taria Isri in Montreal, thanks. Countries around the world are pledging millions in aid for Sudan as the devastating civil war there enters its 4th year. The Canadian government has promised more than $120 million in new aid. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand says Canada is gravely concerned about the worsening humanitarian crisis.
There is indeed credible evidence that starvation is being deliberately used as a method of warfare. Hospitals and civilian infrastructure are being targeted. Women and girls have described sexual violence not as an exception, but as an inescapable reality.
Since the start of the conflict, 1/4 of the population has been forced to flee. That's according to the UN. 21 million Sudanese are also facing acute food insecurity. 2 members of the Canadian Navy have been charged in connection with last year's death of a fellow sailor off Halifax. Petty Officer 2nd Class Gregory Applin died after the rigid inflatable boat he was on capsized. Canadian military police say 2 sailors were on board when the vessel hit a buoy and flipped. 2 Navy sailors face several charges, including criminal negligence causing bodily harm and negligent performance of military duties. It's called looksmaxxing. Coming up, the harmful lengths some young men are going to improve their looks. Plus, caught on camera, the school principal who sprang into action to stop a gunman. And the disturbing allegations being leveled at pop star Katy Perry. Some chilling video from a high school in Oklahoma shows the moment a gunman enters, yells at everyone to get on the ground, and then opens fire. That's when the principal rushed toward him, tackling him and pinning him down. Another staff member then manages to get the gun away. The principal was shot in the leg but has since been released from hospital, and the 20-year-old suspect is in custody. He was a former student at that school. An Australian teenager has pleaded guilty to creating deep-fake pornography in a landmark case in that country. 19-year-old William Yates was the first person to be charged under a new Australian law which criminalizes the creation and distribution of AI-generated sexual images. Deep-fakes of the victim had been posted on multiple social media accounts without her consent. It's something Canadian police are dealing with as well. In December, a 17-year-old Albertan was charged after allegedly using AI to create and post sexualized images of teenage girls in Calgary. Young men are being exposed to another online trend. It's known as looksmaxxing. Influencers urge young men to upgrade their looks using some extreme and dangerous methods. One of the most popular looksmaxxers is a 20-year-old who calls himself Clavicular, who appeared to overdose Tuesday night as he was live streaming with friends. Jeff Semple looks at the risky trend and why some young men are drawn to it.
Welcome everyone to lesson 1 of my Ascension framework.
20-year-old American Braden Peters, better known online as Clavicular, has become the face of a trend called looksmaxxing.
The idea of maximizing physical attractiveness by any means necessary in order to ascend.
Looksmaxxing promotes extreme techniques to improve one's appearance, from striking your face with a hammer to steroid and testosterone injections. Clavicular has also promoted using illegal addictive drugs to lose weight, and his massive online audience is almost entirely young men.
Really the playing up of the no pain, no gain and the very dramatic nature and the broadcasting it very loudly.
Dude, I'm gone. During a video live stream on Tuesday, Clavicular appeared to suffer an overdose. He was rushed to hospital.
So there's some really extreme activities going on at the fringes of these manosphere communities, like in the looksmaxxing community, that can lead to some real individual harm.
How could you ask me that question?
Clavicular also made headlines this week after walking out of an Australian TV interview when the host asked about looksmaxxing and its connections to the incel movement and far-right figures. The negative media coverage condemning his behavior misses the point, says this disinformation expert.
And this isn't about him as a personality and some of his abhorrent views. It's about all our kids. Because the toxic online ecosystem we immerse them in for 5 hours a day on average, it rewards precisely the kind of extreme harmful behavior that puts them at this sort of risk.
After being released from hospital, Clavicular posted this. "That was brutal," he wrote, adding that the worst part were the marks on his face from the life support mask.
If you're not life maxing, you're nothing.
Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
A landmark verdict in the Live Nation Ticketmaster trial, what it could mean for ticket prices. That's next. Police in Melbourne, Australia confirm they are investigating allegations of sexual assault made against pop star Katy Perry. Australian actress Ruby Rose has claimed on social media that Perry assaulted her at a nightclub in Melbourne back in 2010. Rose has filed a police report and police are now looking into the allegation. A representative for Katy Perry calls the claim categorically false and a reckless lie, saying Rose has a history of making serious allegations on social media that have repeatedly been denied. A federal jury in the U.S. has found Live Nation, the entertainment giant that owns Ticketmaster, has been illegally operating as a monopoly and overcharging fans. The landmark verdict is a major win for more than 30 U.S. states, which had accused the company of driving up prices and shutting out competition. The case now moves to a judge who will decide damages and whether major changes, including a possible breakup of Live Nation, could follow. We want the cup. Next, can one of these teams end Canada's Stanley Cup drought?
Voilà. Donc vous venez de gagner cette sublime œuvre. Je vous la montre au
A Parisian man is the lucky winner of a Pablo Picasso painting valued at €1 million. It was part of a charity raffle in Paris. 120,000 tickets were sold at just €100 each, with the proceeds going to Alzheimer's research. The artwork, titled Head of a Woman, was painted in 1941. We are just a few days away from the best time of the year for hockey fans, the NHL playoffs. And of course, there is the usual talk about how long it's been since a Canadian team has hoisted the Stanley Cup. It hasn't happened in 33 years. This season, Canada's hopes lie with Edmonton, Montreal, and Ottawa. Heather Yurix-West looks at how fans feel about their team's chances of winning.
I know I'm an Arsenal fan.
It may be soccer on the screen this afternoon, but playoff hockey will be taking over this Ottawa bar soon.
and Sens fans are pumped.
I mean, I'm really excited. I think the Sens fans show up every time the Sens are in the playoffs, but I'm a lifelong Sens guy.
I hope we do better than last year, obviously, but it should be fun to watch.
Ottawa facing a tough first-round opponent with the best in the East Carolina Hurricanes, making Montreal perhaps Canada's best chance at ending the country's 33-year Stanley Cup drought. Fitting, since it was Montreal who hoisted the trophy way back in 1993.
Yeah, they have great elements throughout the team, so great goaltending lately.
Fun team to watch, you know, like compared to my Leafs, which aren't, you know, it's a tougher season, you know, living in Montreal, you know, it's fun to watch.
Go Abs, go!
After coming heartbreakingly close to the Cup 2 years in a row, the Oilers and their captain Connor McDavid are in the chase too.
I can't fathom the amount of heartbreak that poor guy has felt in the last few years. You know, 2 Stanley Cup final losses and then an Olympic gold medal loss.
When it comes to bars and pubs, it may not matter what team goes the distance, as long as there's a Canadian team going deep enough to keep a country's hopes alive.
Second, third round, you know, that's where things get really great.
But just 3 Canadian teams in the playoff hunt means that fans from cities like Vancouver, Toronto, Winnipeg, and Calgary will have to settle for cheering on a team that's not their own. So go Habs, go Sens, and I guess go Oilers, go. Donna?
Wonder who she's cheering for. Heather Yorks, West in Calgary, thanks. That is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Newcastle, Ontario. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.